GA4 gets a lot of hate, and honestly, I get it. The interface is confusing, the reports are harder to use than universal analytics, and for a lot of businesses, the numbers look even worse than before. Conversions don't match what you see in your Google Ads, Meta Ads, or backend systems like Shopify, HubSpot, or other CRM sales tools. Direct and unassigned traffic looks super high and concerning. Attribution feels unclear. Reports are therefore not trusted, and nobody can confidently say what marketing is really contributing. But the real issue is usually bigger than GA4. Most businesses are happy to invest thousands or even millions into Google Ads, Meta Ads, SEO, email content, and agencies or freelancers to manage some of this activity, but they barely invest in the marketing analytics layer that tells them whether any of it is actually working. Then they wonder why the data is messy, why performance looks inconsistent, and why marketing decisions still feel like guesswork. You don't need to love GA4, but you do need to invest in it and in marketing analytics more broadly, because analytics should sit at the center of your marketing mix. It is what feeds every channel with better data, better insight, and therefore better decision making. GA4, or Google Analytics 4, is Google's web and app analytics platform. In simple terms, it helps you understand how people find your website or app, what they do once they get there, and whether they take the actions that matter to your business. The important difference with GA4 is that it is event-based compared to its predecessor. Instead of only thinking in terms of users, sessions, and page views, GA4 is built around user actions, things like page views, form submissions, purchases, signups, video engagement, downloads, core CTA clicks, checkout steps, quote requests, account registrations, or any other important interaction you choose to track. That is why GA4 matters for marketing. When it is set up properly, it helps you understand who your potential customers are, which channels are driving meaningful actions, which campaigns are bringing valuable users, where people are dropping off in your conversion funnel, and what activity is contributing to business outcomes. It also connects into the wider Google ecosystem, including Google Ads for audience and conversion imports, as well as BigQuery, so you can take more control over your data. You can also bring in campaign data from non-Google platforms such as Meta Ads' cost, click, and impression data. So GA4 is one of the core tools inside your marketing setup, and the value you get from it depends heavily on how well it has been planned, implemented, configured, and maintained. So why does this actually matter? Because without a reliable web analytics setup, you are making marketing decisions without good data. You might know how much you are spending on Google Ads, Meta, LinkedIn, or how much you're investing in SEO, email, and content and other channels. And some of these channels might have its own conversion tracking. But if your analytics setup is weak, you do not really know which activity is driving quality traffic, which campaigns are truly generating meaningful leads or sales, also which part of your content game is helping drive sales and leads, and which is helping with retention. If your website and app is even efficient at converting visitors, who you should be targeting or remarketing to, and therefore where you should be focusing marketing spend, or even where your budget is being wasted. This is why tools like GA4 are important. Not because GA4 is perfect, but because web analytics gives you the measurement layer underneath your marketing activity. And when that data is reliable, every marketing channel benefits. You optimize your paid media campaigns more with better audience data, as well as invest marketing spend more efficiency to channels that work better than others. Your SEO team can understand which content is contributing to business outcomes. Your email team can see how their campaigns are driving better customer retention, possible product upsells, and downsales. Your UX and CRO team can identify where users are struggling on the site and therefore are dropping off in the conversion funnel. And there's more. That is why marketing analytics should not be treated as an afterthought. It is the feedback loop that tells you whether your marketing efforts are actually working. So, what does proper investment in GA4 and marketing analytics actually look like? It starts with treating analytics as part of your marketing infrastructure, not as a last-minute reporting task. The first investment is strategy. Before you install tags, build dashboards, and even look at the data, you need to define what measurement success looks like for the business. What are the main business objectives? How does your marketing funnel tie into this? Once that is clear, you can build a measurement framework. We've already covered measurement frameworks in a previous video, but in a nutshell, this takes your business objectives and breaks them down into marketing KPIs, supporting metrics, funnel stages, segments, and ownership. So instead of just saying we need better data and reporting, you are defining exactly what needs to be measured, why it matters, who owns it, and how it will be used to make decisions. The second investment is planning. This is where you turn the strategy into a practical measurement plan. You audit the website, look at the key user journeys, identify the actions that matter, and decide which forms, CTA buttons, file downloads, checkouts, signups, purchases, demo booked, call schedule, content interactions, or key page module engagement should be tracked. Then you map those actions into a proper GA4 event matrix. What should the event be called? When should it fire? What parameters should be captured? Should it be a key event? Which platforms need to receive it? Is it needed for reporting, optimization, audience building, for remarketing or audience exclusions? This is the bit most businesses skip, but is the most important part of the entire process. The third investment is the technical implementation. Technically, yes, it is easy to create a GA4 property, add a tag to your website, and start collecting some data. But there is a big difference between having GA4 simply installed and having GA4 set up properly. Technical implementation means configuring GA4 properly, setting up GTM correctly, making sure events fire reliably, making sure page views are not duplicated, making sure conversions are not overcounted, making sure e-commerce or lead generation tracking works properly, and making sure the data being collected is actually useful. I regularly see businesses with basic GA4 configuration issues. The GA4 configuration tag is not loading correctly. It is double loading. It's hard-coded and loaded by Google Tag Manager. Page views are firing twice because you forgot to switch off a simple setting. Key events are not firing reliably. Lead forms are missed. E-commerce purchases are duplicated. Important parameters are missed. Referral exclusions are not set up. Cross-domain tracking is not set up properly. Internal traffic is not filtered. Core GA4 settings are left on defaults that are not right for the business. Some tracking can be handled directly inside Google Tag Manager. For example, page views, button clicks, link clicks, file downloads, scroll depth, embedded video engagement, and some basic form interactions can often be tracked using Google Tag Manager triggers, variables, and custom event listeners. But not everything should be tracked this way. For important business actions like purchases, form submissions, customer data, and content info, you track cleanly into the data layer. That is where developer support becomes important. The analytics person needs to create clear data layer developer guides that explain exactly what needs to be pushed into the data layer, when it needs to happen, what the event should be called, and what metadata should be included. This also requires the data layer to be written in a specific, structured way using JavaScript, so Google Tag Manager can reliably pick up the event and pass the right data into GA4 and the rest of your measurement setup. Developers are not responsible for every tracking event, but for the events where accuracy, business context, and backend data matter, a proper data layer is often the difference between fragile tracking and reliable tracking. Then you need to test everything properly. You need to test that the data layer fires at the right moment, with the right event name, with the right parameters, and only when the action has genuinely happened. You also need to test the GTM setup, the right tags firing under the right conditions, with the right data, without key events being missed, duplicated, or firing too early. Then add consent mode on top. This is another area where businesses often underestimate the complexity. They add a cookie banner, connect it to Google Tag Manager, and assume everything is working. But proper consent mode implementation requires careful engineering, or else tracking could be non-compliant, as well as tracking and attribution can even break. Therefore, your cookie consent platform, Google Tag Manager, GA4, Google Ads, and other marketing platforms all need to work together properly. Then you have browser tracking prevention, ad blockers, cookie restrictions, and privacy changes, which have made client-side tracking less reliable than it used to be. For some businesses, this means server-side tracking becomes an important next step. But server-side tracking is not something you should just bolt on without understanding what you are doing. You need to understand server-side setup, architecture, first-party data collection, event enrichment, platform-specific requirements, and how to validate whether the server-side setup is actually improving data quality rather than creating new problems. This is why GA4 and marketing analytics require proper skill. You need measurement strategy, GA4 event structure, Google Tag Manager expertise, JavaScript data layer knowledge, consent mode, QA testing, and the ability to communicate clearly with developers when custom data layer work is needed. Because if your tracking is badly planned, badly implemented, or badly tested, the data will be unreliable from the start. And for lead generation businesses, there is another layer that often gets missed completely: offline conversion tracking. If you are generating leads through your website, the form submission is usually not the real business outcome. The real outcome is what happens afterwards. Did that lead become qualified? Did they book a call? Did they attend the demo? Did they become an opportunity? Did they close into revenue? Were they actually the type of customer you wanted? If your tracking stops at the form submission, then your reporting is only showing the first step of the journey. You might know which campaigns generated leads, but you don't know which campaigns generated good leads. That is why offline conversion tracking is so important. It allows you to connect CRM or sales data back to your marketing analytics setup so you can understand which leads actually became valuable, not just which leads filled in a form. But again, this is not simple. You need to first decide if you should send this data to GA4 or whether you want to just join it up in tools like BigQuery with raw level data to avoid it messing up your GA4 data. But it is complex to do properly, which is exactly why it needs proper investment, planning, and technical expertise. Even once the data collection is in place, you still need the analytics capability to use the data properly. GA4's interface can be confusing. The standard reports have limitations. Exploration reports are useful, but they require proper understanding. Attribution reports need context, and attribution models also need to be selected. Channel groupings need to be interpreted carefully. And if you want real control over your data and to bypass sampling and other limits like thresholding GA4 UI can have, you probably need to move beyond the GA4 interface and start working with BigQuery. That means understanding raw event-level data, knowing how GA4 stores users, sessions, events, and other parameters, and being able to query and model that data using SQL. So GA4 is not something you install once and forget about. To get real value from it, you need the strategy to know what should be measured, the technical skill to collect the data properly, and the analytical skill to turn that data into insight and action. When businesses skip those steps, the data is bad. And when the data is bad, GA4 usually gets blamed. But most of the time, the problem is not that GA4 is useless. The problem is that nobody invested the time, skill, and structure needed to make it useful. So, how much time do you realistically need to invest in GA4 and marketing analytics as a whole? Now, this will always depend on the business. A simple lead generation website is very different from a complex e-commerce store. A single market website is different from a multi-region website. And a basic GA4 with Google Tag Manager setup is very different from a full setup with advanced consent mode, server-side tracking, CRM offline conversion integration. But as a rough benchmark, I think most businesses underestimate this massively. For a small, simpler website, whether that is lead generation or e-commerce, you are probably looking around 3 to 4 days to do the strategy, measurement planning, GA4 and GTM setup, key event tracking, cookie consent integration, and proper testing. That does not mean 3 to 4 days of just placing tags. That means defining what should be measured, mapping the key events, configuring GA4 properly, implementing tracking, integrating consent mode, testing the user journeys, validating the data, and making sure the core reports and conversions are usable. Then after that, you probably need around half a day per month just to maintain it. That might include just checking key events are still firing, reviewing data quality, testing important forms or checkout journeys, checking consent behavior, reviewing campaign attribution, investigating tracking issues, and making sure website changes have not broken anything. For a mid-sized business, you're probably looking at closer to 5 to 7 days for the initial strategy and implementation. That is because there are usually more journeys, more channels, more conversion points, more functionality on the website and app to track, and therefore more reporting requirements and more things that can go wrong. Then ongoing maintenance is probably around 1 day per month. And for larger or more complex businesses, you are realistically looking 8 to 10 days or even more in very rare cases for the initial work, especially if there are multiple domains and therefore multiple markets, e-commerce complexity, logged in areas, offline conversion tracking, server-side tagging, stricter consent requirements. For those businesses, ongoing maintenance of tracking might be 2 days per month or even a bit more. And to be clear, These estimates are not for building out lots of custom dashboards, advanced reporting suites, BigQuery models, attribution analysis, forecasting, audience strategies, or data activation workflows. This is just the time needed to build the measurement foundation properly. Because once that foundation is in place, then you can start doing the more advanced work. You can build better dashboards. You can analyze performance properly. You can truly understand your audiences and activate them in marketing tools. You can feed better conversion data into ad platform. You can move into BigQuery to do more advanced attribution and customer journey analysis. But if the foundation is weak, all of that advanced work is built on bad data. GA4 marketing analytics do need proper time, skill, and ongoing ownership. A rushed 1 day or even 2 day setup might give you data, but it probably will not give you data you can properly trust. So, what happens when you do invest properly? This is where GA4 marketing analytics starts becoming genuinely valuable. The first thing that improves is trust. When your events are planned properly, your key conversions are firing reliably, your consent setup is working correctly, and your data has been properly tested, people start to trust the numbers more. That does not mean every platform will match perfectly. GA4 will still not perfectly match Google Ads, Meta Ads, Shopify, HubSpot, or any other backend system exactly because these platforms all use different attribution models, reporting logic, processing rules, and definitions. But the gap will likely be closer, in particular if you do proper server-side tagging. The second thing that improves is attribution. Again, attribution is never perfect in the current data privacy world we live in. But when your UTMs are clean, your campaign tracking is consistent, your referral exclusions are correct, your cross-domain tracking is working, your consent mode is implemented properly, and your key events are reliable, and you also decide to upgrade to server-side tagging, you get a much clearer picture of which channels and campaigns are contributing to results. Direct and unassigned traffic and conversion numbers become more realistic and also become easier to diagnose when they do, in some cases, spike. You can spot where channel grouping classification is breaking. You can understand which channels are being underreported or misclassified. And you can make better decisions instead of just arguing over which number is right. The third thing that improves is your understanding of your audiences and website behavior. When GA4 is set up properly, you can understand much more than just how many users visited the website. You can start to analyze how different audiences behave based on the actual actions they take, the content they engage with, the products or services they show interest in, their lead quality, their customer type, their funnel stage, their location, their device, their traffic source, and the value of the actions they complete. This is where a more advanced GA4 setup becomes powerful. You are not just tracking generic page views and form submissions and maybe purchases. You can track and analyze things like product category interest, service line interest, quote value ranges, lead type, form category, customer status, subscription plan of interest, donation amount, basket value, checkout stages, account registration status, content engagement depth, or whether a user completed multiple high intent actions in the same journey. That gives you a much clearer view of how users are engaging with your website and conversion funnels. For example, you could understand which traffic sources are driving users who view high value product categories, which campaigns generate users who complete multiple buying signals before converting, which content journeys lead to better quality inquiries, which segments repeatedly start but abandon key conversion steps, or which audiences engage heavily but never become commercially valuable. This also improves your audience strategy. Instead of building basic remarketing audiences like all website visitors or people who viewed a specific page, you can build more meaningful audiences based on intent, funnel stage, value, and behavior. For example, you might build audiences of users who viewed a specific service category, engaged with pricing content, started a quote journey, reached a certain basket value, viewed multiple high margin products, submitted a low quality inquiry, abandoned a key step, or showed strong intent but did not complete the final conversion. And just as importantly, you can build better exclusion audiences to save money. You can exclude existing customers or recent purchases, low quality lead types, people who have already completed the desired action, users who are not commercially relevant, or segments that consistently engage but do not convert into value. So better GA4 investment does not just improve marketing performance reporting, it helps you understand who your users are and what they are interested in and where they are in the funnel, where they get stuck, which behavior actually matter, and how you can use that insight to improve both your website and your marketing decisions. So better GA4 investment does not just improve marketing performance reporting, it helps you understand who your users are, what they are interested in, where they are in the funnel, where they get stuck, which behaviors actually matter, and how you can use that insight to improve both your website and your marketing decisions. The fourth thing that it improves is diagnostics. When something looks wrong, you are in a much better position to investigate it. If conversions drop, you can test whether the issue is real performance, broken tracking, form errors, checkout changes, consent issues, or reporting delays. Or if you add certain custom dimensions like Google Tag Manager tag name, and you noticed a sudden spike in something like direct traffic, you can use this in your GA4 reports and understand if it's a tag that caused this attribution issue, or due to a recent tracking change, or if it is something reason else like a genuine bot traffic. That is a huge difference. And without a proper analytics setup, bad data creates confusion. And therefore, with a proper analytics setup, data issues can actually be investigated and explained and fixed if needed. The fifth thing that improves is confidence. If you run all your marketing in-house, then your marketing teams can make decisions with more confidence. If you have an agency running some of your marketing, you can confidently see if they are doing a good job. And generally, you can make better decisions about where to invest next. And that is ultimately the point. The goal is not to make GA4 perfect, as that is impossible. The goal is to create a measurement setup that is reliable enough to support better decisions. Because when you invest properly in GA4 and marketing analytics, you are not just improving a reporting tool, you are improving the feedback loop across your entire marketing mix. That is why this investment matters. Not because GA4 is exciting, not because the interface is perfect, but because better data leads to better decisions. And better decisions are what improve marketing performance and therefore overall business KPIs. At this point, some people might be thinking, well, if GA4 causes this much frustration, should we just switch to a different analytics tool? And my honest answer is probably not for most businesses, as it's free. And when done correctly, it's just as good as any other tool, if not arguably better. But that does not mean GA4 is the best tool for every business, every team, or every use case. There are cases where other web and app analytics tools might make more sense. For example, some businesses have much stronger data privacy requirements. In those cases, tools like Matomo or Piwik Pro may be a better fit because the business wants more control over the data ownership, hosting, consent, privacy configuration, and governance. For some enterprise businesses may also reach a point where the free version of GA4 is no longer enough for their needs. At that point, they may need to consider GA360, or they may decide that another tool like Adobe Analytics is better fit depending on their scale, internal data infrastructure, reporting requirements, governance needs, and existing enterprise technology stack. And then you also have product analytics tools. But I would look at those slightly differently. Tools like PostHog, Amplitude, Mixpanel, or similar products analytics platforms are usually not direct replacements for web analytics tools like GA4, but they are better seen as tools that can run alongside your web and app analytics setup. GA4 is usually stronger for understanding website acquisition campaign performance, traffic sources, landing pages, content journeys, and marketing conversion paths. Product analytic tools are usually stronger for understanding logged in user behavior, feature usage, activation, retention, product journeys, and lifecycle engagement. So for some businesses, especially SaaS, apps and platforms and logged in products, the right answer is not necessarily GA4 or product analytics. It is often both. But switching tools does not remove the underlying measurement problem. If you do not know what you are trying to measure, another tool will not fix that. If your events are badly planned, another tool will not fix that. If your conversion tracking is unreliable, another tool will not fix that. If your consent setup is broken and not integrated with your tracking, another tool will not fix that. If nobody owns marketing analytics, another tool will not fix that either. So the question should not be, can we replace GA4 so we do not have to think about analytics properly? The better question is, what measurement setup do we actually need to make better marketing decisions? For most businesses, GA4 should still be a core part of that setup. For some businesses, it may need to sit alongside product analytics tools, BI tools, CRM data. And for some privacy-focused or enterprise businesses, a different web analytics platform may genuinely be a better fit. But the key point is this: you do not get good data just because you switch platforms. You get good data when you invest in the strategy, implementation, analysis, and maintenance needed to make whichever platform you choose actually useful. Also to note, if you invest in any form of Google marketing, paid or organic, then GA4 will need some kind of setup to help these. So even if you choose another web or app analytics tool, you'll probably need a base level GA4 setup alongside it to be able to create audiences to import to Google Ads, etc. You do not need to love GA4. You do not need to think the interface is perfect. You do not need to pretend the reports are always easy to use. You do not need to ignore the fact that attribution is more complicated than it used to be. But you do need to take GA4 marketing analytics seriously. Because if you treat GA4 as a cheap reporting tool that someone can quickly install in a day or so, you will probably end up with data that nobody trusts. But if you treat it as a part of your marketing infrastructure, the value changes completely. You start with strategy. You define what success looks like. You build a measurement plan and framework. You implement the tracking properly. You test it properly. You maintain it properly. Then you use the data to make better decisions. That is when GA4 becomes useful, not because the tool is perfect, but because the business has invested enough time, skill, and structure to make the data meaningful. And this is the point most businesses miss. They invest heavily in marketing, paid ads, organic content, or even with agencies or freelancers running and managing these, but invest in the measurement layer that tells them whether any of it is actually working That is backwards. Marketing analytics should sit at the center of your marketing mix. It should be the feedback loop that helps every channel improve. So no, you do not need to love GA4. But if you care about better marketing decisions, better data, better reporting, confidence, and better marketing performance, you do need to invest in it. If you found this video useful, like this video and subscribe to the channel because I'll be covering more practical videos on measurement strategy, GA4, tracking in GTM, cookie consent and consent mode, BigQuery, and more marketing analytics topics.